Okay, chapter 7.7, solve right triangles. When we talk about solving right triangles, that means we're going to find all the angle measures, all the side lengths, everything. So when you solve a right triangle, you have to figure everything out. All right, so with that being said, let's go ahead and just get started, jump right in. So the first thing that you'll notice is that we need to find the measure of AB. We don't have AB, so in order to find AB, how do we do that? Okay, well, you can use the Pythagorean theorem, of course. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. You also might notice that this triangle is a special right triangle. It is the 3, 4, 5 version. Okay, so obviously 3 times 5 is 15, and 4 times 5 is 20, so 5 times 5 is 25, so you know that AB is equal to 25. Okay, so that's the first thing that we needed to figure out. Okay, and we did that without Pythagorean theorem to speed up the process. All right, so now we know this is 25. Let's find the measure of angle A. Okay, well, the measure of angle A can be found a couple different ways, especially since I know the sides of all my all the sides of my triangle. Okay, so how are we going to do that? What do you want to use? We can use tangent, we can use sine, cosine, because you've learned them all. So what do you want to use? Well, I prefer to use the values that were already given to me. Anytime I have the opportunity to use the values that were already given to me, I'm going to use those over the values I generate. Now, sometimes I know you're going to have to use the values you generate, but in this case, I'm going to use the ones that were given. So I'm going to use 15 and 20. So I have my opposite over adjacent. So I'm going to use the tangent of angle A is equal to the opposite, which is 15 over 20. Okay, and if I do that, I'm going to say the tangent of angle A is equal to 15 divided by 20 is 0.75. And then this is where you need to plug into your calculator. You do the inverse button. So second tangent in your calculator and put in 0.75 and then hit enter, and you're going to find out that it's going to equal 36.9. Okay, so again, in your calculator it would look like this, tanverse, or the inverse tangent, okay, of angle A. Put in your calculator is 0.75, and then you end up with the measure of angle A is equal to 36.9. Okay, you can do the same thing with sine or cosine. I just want to go ahead and set that up for you guys who want to do sine. So if you want to do the sine of angle A, you would have done opposite over hypotenuse, which would be 15 over 25. You could have done that. I think that's how your pre-printed notes show you. You could have also done the cosine of angle A, which would have been 20 over 25. And use the same process as this over here. Okay? Now once we have our angle A measure being 36.9, how would I get angle B? Well, it's very simple. The measure of angle B is equal to 90 minus 36.9, right? I know that those two angles are complementary, so the measure of angle B is going to be equal to 53.1. And so now every angle has been solved. Okay, I know A, B, and C, and I know every side, so this right triangle is said to be solved. Okay, moving on. The next day or so, we're going to start talking about angle of elevation. Angle of elevation is simply put, it's basically when you're looking from the base upward. Okay, so when you're looking up, you're looking at an angle of elevation. Okay, your head goes up, you elevate, those kind of things. Okay, so in our example, in our picture here, 70 degrees right here is going to be our angle of elevation. And so with that, it'll allow us to figure out how tall this tower is. This is a tower. If you're using those pre-printed notes, this is a tower. And if I want to figure out how tall the tower is, if I'm standing 60 feet away, so the distance from me to the base of the tower is 60 feet, I can figure out how tall it is. Okay, how would I figure that out? Okay, I have, what two sides am I dealing with? This is the adjacent side, right? And this is the opposite side, right? So if I'm dealing with adjacent and opposite and I'm not using the hypotenuse, that means I'm using tangent. So I'm going to say the tangent of 70 degrees is equal to the opposite, which I don't know right now, over 60 feet. So then, in order to get the opposite by itself, we'll multiply both sides by 60. And this is going to cancel out. So now my calculator, I need to hit the tangent button. And I need to hit 70 so I can get my crazy decimal. So I'm going to have 60 times 2.747 ... because I'm going to use the entire number, is equal to the height of this tower, or the opposite side. Okay? And so when I multiply 60 times that number, I end up with the tower being about 164.8 feet tall. And if you round that to the nearest foot, obviously it'd be 165 feet. Okay? So that's how I use my angle of elevation in order to determine how high something is. People use this all the time.
Teachers, pardon the brief interruption.
Okay, so this is how we use the angle of elevation in order to solve a problem. And like I was saying, that people do this all the time because it's sometimes hard to get the height of something, especially inanimate objects. So people use this all the time in order to find the height. So this is actually a real world application type problem. Okay? Now, with that being said, the opposite of angle of elevation is going to be your angle of depression. Okay, so again, if elevation is looking up, now you're talking about from the top looking down, except this has a little extra caveat to it. So we're going to jump right into our problem. Okay, so if somebody's sitting on a tower, like we have here, and they're looking straight across, that would be represented by the dotted line. But their angle of angle of depression, because they're looking down to this fire, okay? What you're going to notice is that the angle of elevation is not angle of depression is not this one, okay? But rather it's this right here. Okay? And also notice that you're dealing with parallel line. Okay, so my angle of depression now is 36. Please don't get confused with assuming that this is my angle of depression. Okay? Now, with that being said, what I can do is I will notice that because these lines are parallel, and now you have a transversal, you also notice that these are congruent. So, if you don't already have this on the pre-printed notes, you need to write this down. The angle of depression and angle of elevation are congruent. And if you take your prior knowledge, that's because you're in between parallel lines and they are alternate interior angles. So now, if I want to find the distance from the base of the tower to this fire, I can use this 36, knowing that I'm dealing with opposite of 36 is 150 feet, and then adjacent is my distance I'm looking for. So if I'm using opposite and adjacent, I'm dealing with tangent. So I would find the tangent of 36 degrees is equal to opposite 150 over x. So then I'm going to multiply both sides by x. Okay, and that's going to cancel this out. And then what I'm going to end up is having to divide by the tangent of 36. And that's when you're going to have to plug in your calculator to figure out your answer. All right, so you find out that the answer is x equals 206.5 feet. So you're 206.5 feet from the base of the tower to the fire. Now, the other thing I want to show you, and I blacked it out on this so that you can see it as we go, is that 36-degree angle right there. You'll notice that because these are parallel lines, that this is complementary. And so this angle measure right here that I just uncovered is 54 degrees. And so you could have, since they're complementary, used 54 degrees and done the tangent of 54 is x over 150 and figured out the same answer. Okay? So that's a possibility as well. And that pretty much wraps it up for our sine and cosine chapters in the book. And when you come back, you'll finish up 7-7. And then tomorrow you'll do, the next day you'll do, the next day we'll take a quiz, and then we'll come back after the quiz and do depression and elevation and so on and so forth. You'll do that first. And anyhow, so that's pretty much it. Make sure you understand this fully. This is stuff that you're going to need to keep with you. All right? Other than that, have a good night and stay warm.